Hey, the Steelers are 3-0. Let's insert the I wish I had like an overlay of the Paul Rudd meme where he's on Hot Ones. He's like, who would have thought? You and I. Look where we are. Jerry Bailey, my good buddy Mick Faribault from Penn Live. Hi, pal.
How you doing, man? How you doing?
I'm living great, man. I didn't think that we would be sitting here talking about a 3-0 football team, and I didn't think we'd be talking about Justin Fields looking like much improved as a passer, looking like really good, especially down the stretch yesterday. It's a breath of fresh air. I have you and I have known each other a good amount of time. We've been friends for a while. You know that the last 2 years have been pretty rough to be a
Yeah.
Steelers fan, for especially if you wanted to see explosive offensive play. But we're starting to see that slightly more as the weeks go on, and it's enlightening. It feels good.
It's popping, man. It is.
Yeah.
It's starting to get there. It's still not like super
Right.
super pretty, but it's gotten to watchable now. Before it was definitely unwatchable, ugly, one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Now it's like watchable. There's fun there. Like you have moments of a lot of fun watching the Steelers offense. And then the defense this year is just so good that how can you not have fun watching what the Steelers are doing defensively? It is such such a joy to watch them. So, yeah, man, it's fun to watch this team. It's fun to watch the development of these guys, and I mean they're having about as good a start as I think you could have imagined them having. I really think it couldn't have gone much better than how it's gone through 3 weeks.
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you're watching, you see the title is Justin Fields centric. So I want to get your opinion on it, and then I'll give mine. Your thoughts on Fields right now, what it means for him going forward, what it means for the quarterback situation going forward, because obviously there's a Russell Wilson sized elephant in this room that will eventually need addressed. But for right now, I mean, they're I don't see them pulling the plug on this.
No, I think you got to play Justin Fields at least this week against Indianapolis, probably longer. I would at least. Listen, he is showing legitimate growth. You look at his time in Chicago, you look at his time now. I mean, he is I know it's 3 games, but through 3 games he is on pace to set a career low for time to throw, pressure to sack ratio, all the negativity. He hasn't had a turnover worthy play yet this year. I know he had the pick, and I think you could probably call that, but it was just one.
Yeah.
Taking care of the football. He's not taking as many bad sacks. He's cutting down on his negativity. And while the incredible highs haven't necessarily popped up just yet, the 80-yard touchdown runs that he creates out of nothing, we haven't seen that. We have seen some dazzling plays. He's really been a pretty high floor player for them. And he's been really solid. And he's starting to process things, man. He's starting to throw with some anticipation over the middle of the field. Like, these are things that I just don't think we saw out of Justin Fields in Chicago. And so it's promising. I'm not ready to say he's a reborn man yet, but I think they're doing a really nice job of building his confidence back up. I think a lot of the kind of vanilla-ness of the offense is partially to try and help build Justin Fields up, and it's very smart to do it that way. But I also think the Steelers are starting to kind of take the training wheels off a little bit. We
Mhm.
saw some signs of that last week, and I think you saw Justin Fields respond quite well to it. So he's got to play with a lot of confidence right now, man. That's a huge thing for him.
Yeah, and like I didn't go into week one thinking like, all right, this is immediately going to be a high-powered, explosive offense. Like you got to work your way to the five-course meal, and that's fine. I didn't go into week one expecting caviar. Right now, I think we're kind of at like a Wendy's 4 for 4. I can get along with a Wendy's 4 for 4. It's pretty good. And I'll dip my fries in the frosty. I'll have Justin Fields making some plays with his arm and scoring touchdowns with his legs. Like overall, he's been. I think yesterday, easily his best game as a Steeler. It's his best game as a passer without having to rely on his legs in as long as I can remember. He had a pair of games last year where he threw 4 touchdowns in consecutive weeks. But even then, I mean, we still saw that vintage Justin Fields where he would take off and have a big play with his legs. They haven't really asked him to do that too much. He only had 6 rushing yards yesterday. But he made several throws that were like, okay, like there's something there. There was one to Pat Fryermuth over the middle of the field where he fit it into a pea-sized window. Muth dropped it, and that stuff happens and whatnot. But it was a great throw, and then the throw to Austin, the safety was coming down. He threw in a window of 3 different Chargers, and obviously Austin takes it 55 yards to the house. But like stuff like that where he's showing clear growth. And I think he talked about it after the game yesterday, and I'm paraphrasing here. You can kind of remember it a little bit better since you were there. Where he's like, yeah, I just feel comfortable in the pocket. I don't feel I feel a lot more comfortable this year than I have in years past.
And I think like the big thing, right? You look at him and you say, "Man, this guy is not bailing on clean pockets as much anymore." Now, I think, you can look at maybe the 1 or 2 of his sacks from yesterday and say, there was someone there that maybe he should have gotten the ball out to,
Yeah.
and, he's not fully, like, shedding of his bad habits just yet, but they are so diminished that the negativity is not coming back to kill him anymore.
Mhm.
And, I think the throw to Freiermuth was really good. I really liked, some of the manipulation he did with his eyes. If you watch some of the end zone views of the All-22, you'll see his stripe go from right to left. He holds safeties a little bit just for that extra second, just a little bit of manipulation for him. Like, you can even see on the Austin touchdown, he looks left first to hold that safety and then wraps it right back to Austin, knowing where he was gonna go. That's high level quarterback play. And, like, I think the one thing with him is, and I think, a lot of guys when they're trying to transition from, this guy that plays out of structure and is so reliant on doing out of structure things, and Fields has been that in the NFL, to pocket passer, it sometimes goes from one extreme to the other, and I don't think we've seen that, right? I think Fields has kinda started to develop in terms of his game from the pocket. You talk about those 4 TD games that he had in Chicago, a lot of those were just plays he made out of structure,
Yeah.
plays that he made there. I don't know how many, plays consistently he has had from the pocket like this. So he's winning from the pocket, and that's sustainable. That's really good, if you're seeing that. So I think there's really, really positive things to take away from Justin Fields' performance. And again, we haven't even seen the full capability of his legs yet because we know he's dangerous with his legs. They haven't really, outside of week 1, they didn't fully lean into the QB run game stuff. So
Yeah.
there's meat on the bone that they can still hit. And with all the running back injuries this week, I'm assuming that we might see them lean into some of those Justin Fields runs this week. But he's just growing, man. He looks more and more confident each week.
Yeah, especially because they're going up against an Indianapolis team that you can certainly run the ball against, and that's been the Steelers' weakness thus far. Like they've put up north of 100 yards consistently, but it's been on 3.4 yards a carry. They only had 45 yards ahead of that final drive yesterday before Patterson and Harris really took over and marched them down the field. So they've struggled in that regard a little bit. But if there is a team that you can run against, it is the Indianapolis Colts, and hopefully they lean into that QB run game a little bit more. You brought up the defense. I said that it's the best defense they've had since 2010, and I'm pretty strong in that conviction right now.
Yeah. Listen, man. I think when you look at Justin and what he's done, he has just done. I think each week when you look at like the palette of the plate, I guess Arthur Smith has given him, right? So let's go from week 1. Rollouts, QB run game, lean into that stuff. Easy stuff. You neutralize Jarrett, you neutralize Judon, and you allow them to avoid Jesse Bates. It like works
Yeah.
perfect, right? You're like, yes, great. Week 2, uh, started to do a lot of quick game stuff, and Justin created stuff out of structure because he kind of had to, but the penalties killed everything, and so it was like, okay, what do you even do? Great first half, second half, I think there was definitely a lot that Justin would want back. He missed a few reads. And then this week it was like, okay, the training wheels were on for that first half for a little bit. They were running the ball, but that second half and really I guess that final drive of the first half on, like Arthur Smith let him do pretty much a lot of things. We saw a lot of old concepts get peeled out of the Arthur Smith Rolodex that
Mhm.
we had seen, from his days in Atlanta, from the Tannehill days in Tennessee, some things that you were like, why haven't we seen those yet? Probably because Arthur Smith was like, okay, I'm gonna wait until Justin's fully comfortable here. So it's really good offensive coordinating too. I think that's something else. Like I definitely have had some, qualms with what Arthur Smith has done through the first 3 weeks of the season, but like I think the singular goal they came into this with was like, hey man, how can we get Justin comfortable? How can we build him
Mhm.
up? Because what I think we would have seen with Russ was the full cachet, right? Like you would have seen that he's a vet, and that's probably why they wanted to start Russ right away, just because they could feel like they could run the full offense with him. And Justin, came in from Chicago a little bit broken, like he needed to be put back together a little bit. And they're doing that piece by piece, but so far it's going really well. They're handling him with care, and sometimes I think it's maybe to a detriment on the offense around him at times, but if it hits big, right, then no one's going to complain about it.
Yeah, and they have that built-in luxury of knowing that teams aren't going to score a ton against them, so they can kind of play, with safe hands and whatnot. Um, we do have a comment here. Play calling was questionable. Why are we running toss to Harris in the shotgun? Yeah, I wrote about that a little bit today. They've done that play quite a few times, and I don't think it's worked once. There was a 4-yard loss yesterday. I think they ran it a couple times, and yeah, like Art, you're doing a fine job, but throw that play in the Monongahela River. I couldn't say that word
It's a
correctly.
Mike McDaniel play. He
Is
runs with
that?
Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. You don't run it with Najee
Yeah, I
Harris.
was gonna say that's a speed back type of thing, which Najee is not.
I would say one thing that I understand why they ran it against this team specifically, because you had Mack and Bosa, and even when Bosa got hurt, you had Tui Pulotu and Dupree, who are legitimately good players, and Derwin screaming off the edge. And part of it, I think, was to try and kind of neutralize the blitz and passing situations, because you kind of had to respect the edge a little bit.
Mhm.
So I think they did that to a degree, because I don't think Justin really got pressured a ton after they started really spamming at the toss. It's like I understand what the usage of that play was for in this game specifically, but yeah, I mean, in the future, I think if you're gonna run that play, run it with either Warren or Cordero, and not
Yeah.
not.
How about Cordero though? Final drive of the game, he just runs over a bunch of people for a couple big gains, and they kind of put the game on ice there. We talked about the run game a little bit. What's the run game got to do to get better? Because we're seeing like Zach Frazier's opening up lanes consistently, which has been great to see from the center position. But they are also like notoriously banged up front right now.
Banged up front end of the backfield now. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren both hurt. So it's a tough one. Personnel is an issue. I think that's the biggest issue. I just don't see the personnel playing well enough right now. Like, let's be real here. Left guard has been an absolute black hole the first 3 weeks of the season.
They put in McCormick because Spencer Anderson wasn't getting the job done.
Anderson has just struggled. Run game, pass game, whatever. McCormick was like a wild freight train out there. It's like didn't know what he was doing half the time, just missed guys. But when he hit big, and he was pretty steady in pass pro. And so there was positives for McCormick. If Sayamalo can't play, I would start McCormick this week personally. I think you have more upside there, but they need Isaac Sayamalo back so badly.
Yeah.
He will be a huge boost to this team up front when clearing those lanes. Losing Troy Falatano is a really big blow to this team. I just think he was so good in his first start, and I think he was going to be so good by the season's end. Maybe for the playoffs, that's something. They need Broderick Jones to not torpedo drives. He didn't yesterday. That's a good performance to build on. I think still the performance was pretty inconsistent overall, but it's probably his best tape of the season, to be quite honest with you. I thought he was better in this game than he was in Atlanta. Dan Moore, is a really good run blocker, so there's that. I think
he got beat pretty handily by Khalil Mack on one rep yesterday. That led to a sack.
I don't know why. That was an odd one. He did like the chase down technique, but Najee was to his inside shipping. I don't know what the strategy was there. If that happens, you almost you almost have to guess that one of the guys didn't know what the protection call was and just went rogue. So that's probably what happened there. But I look at someone like Spencer Anderson and say that's a big upgrade area. I also don't think the scheme has been super great. I don't love Najee Harris's and Jalen Warren's scheme fit, period. I would like to see them lean more into pulling stuff, gap stuff, like the stuff we saw down the stretch last year with Najee and Jalen. I think Cordero is a great fit for the scheme, and that's what I think you saw, down the stretch was he's perfect. Like he hits those cutback lanes and he just goes. He's like Patterson goes from 0 to 100 and just runs really upright, but he hits like he's a former receiver. You can tell like he is taking on the running back so well. He's a perfect scheme fit for them. I just don't think Najee and Jalen are like perfectly glove like scheme fits. And so I think part of it is schematic design. I haven't loved the run game schematic design. The play action passing game is also kind of ties into this. The play action passing game has been awful all season for the Steelers. Like even yesterday, their play action passing game was not the reason they moved the ball. It was mostly either RPOs or drop back. And I just don't think that's super sustainable for this offense. I think they're going to need that big play action passing game to go. And when the play action passing game isn't working like that, then I mean they're just going to key in on the runs. So I think there's a few things, but I think A1 is personnel related. A2, I would say the dumb penalties almost always come on run plays, it feels like. Like, it always feels like illegal formation on, like, a 7-yard run or a holding call.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 big things, and I think third, you would want some schematic spice there with Arthur Smith.
Yeah, and in terms of the offensive line, like when Fatanu does come back, especially like going in the next season, and I know it's a long way to look ahead, but there's a second straight year that Broderick's going to play the right side. Are they just going to move Fatanu to the left side? Because at that point, what's the point of trying to do that with Broderick again?
If I just do not understand why you wouldn't at that point just play Broderick at right tackle. I know they've talked about him playing at left tackle, but I mean, you have to assume if he's starting at right tackle all year this year,
Yeah.
it's 2 full years at right tackle. At that point, natural position doesn't really matter as much, I feel like. Now you could like this is not a I don't think this is such an extreme as Dotson, right? Where Dotson played on his unnatural side for 4 years,
Mhm.
switched back to his natural side and was instantly like a Pro Bowler. Like I don't think if you move Broderick Jones to left tackle, he's suddenly a Pro Bowl left
Yeah.
tackle. Like, I don't think that happens. So like if he makes legitimate strides technically at right tackle, I think you have to keep him at right tackle, and you should probably have pretty good confidence Troy can play left tackle because that was his natural spot in college. So I don't think that there would be a lot of concerns. I mean, listen, coming out of the draft, that's what I probably would have done anyways. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, let's just say I think the one interesting scenario is let's say, they get to the playoffs and like, we're in the divisional round here and Troy's ready to come back. I don't know what you do. If you get there with Moore and Broderick, I think you just rock with Moore and Broderick
Right.
probably, and that rather than throwing Broderick over to left tackle. But I mean, that's a scenario that is also interesting that I've thought about. Is if Fautun is ready to come back for a wild card divisional game, I wonder what they do.
Yeah, that is something to keep an eye on. Like, especially because like Dan Moore hasn't been like awful. You pointed that out; he's been fine. Um, and if Faltanu, yeah, you don't want to rush it back because they kind of already did rush him back, and then he gets hurt again. So it's a slippery slope to go down. Nick Herbig had a big game yesterday after Alex Highsmith went down. I've long been I guess not quite as big as Brian Baldinger is, but definitely in my opinion the second best edge rusher that they have. I know that they paid Alex Highsmith, but I mean if he's consistently playing this well, I would like to at minimum see those two rotate. I think that Herbig's the better player though.
It's interesting. I'm not completely sold that Herbig is the better player yet. He's the better pass rusher, but I
Yeah.
don't think that should be conflated with better player.
Okay.
Highsmith,
Fair enough.
I think Highsmith has become the most underrated player on the team. I do.
Okay.
I think people don't fully grasp what Alex Highsmith does for this team. He's a really good pass rusher. Now he's not as freaky off the line of scrimmage like TJ Watt and Nick Herbig are. Those guys are just explosive rockets off the side. But Highsmith has enough burst. He's easily the most crafty of their rushers. TJ wins with that rip and dip basically all the time. Like, he doesn't really need to pull out another move. Herbig can pull out other moves, but like you look at Highsmith's wins, he's pulling out like 6 different moves a game to get pressure. So I think his hand usage is great. I think he's probably their best run defender, pure run defender on the edge. TJ's also great, but like Highsmith is phenomenal all around. So I think you can do so much with Highsmith. Like I would not take Highsmith out of the starting lineup. I would just play Nick Herbig a lot more.
Yeah.
Like TJ Watt was playing 90% of the snaps, and Alex Highsmith was playing 84% of the snaps before this injury, before this Chargers game. I mean, let's be real here. You shaved 10% off that. That's 15 more snaps for Nick Herbig. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of what you need. And so I think that's the solution is instead of Nick Herbig playing 15 snaps, let's get him 30. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like he is too dynamic to sit on the bench. Absolutely. I'm not sure I would supplant Alex Highsmith because I think people really lose sight of what Alex Highsmith brings. And I get people, saying trade Alex Highsmith, and like I don't get it. And maybe if the perfect scenario comes up, right, where the superstar receiver for Highsmith would do it. Maybe you do that. But like guys, you have to understand how much you have to thread the needle for that. if you can have like, let's throw out. I know Jarrett, you're a huge fan of the Devontae Adams scenario.
Yeah, sure.
Let's say Devontae Adams wants to become a Pittsburgh Steeler, and your options would be to trade Alex Highsmith or trade a second round pick. Like I'm trading the second round pick.
Oh yeah, I'm trading the second round pick for sure.
Right. Like if you had an Ayuk situation, like the 49ers wanted Alex Highsmith as part of that Ayuk deal, and they said no. So I mean,
Yeah, I'm definitely on record for saying I would have absolutely done that trade for Ayuk if it included Highsmith. I was like, okay.
I'm hesitant for doing that because this defensive line, in my opinion, is the best in football, and it is the lifeblood of this team, no matter what you say.
Mm-hmm.
They are the lifeblood of this team, and having 3 great edge rushers is so valuable. Nick Herbig would start on
a lot of teams.
To have 3 of these guys. And I think, I think one thing that's going to be revealed during this absence for Highsmith is that they have a very capable fourth. I think Leal's going to show you guys some things too, because he had an awesome summer and he had an awesome preseason. And so I'm really excited to see what Leal can do too. I think the Steelers are legit 4 deep at that spot, and I think Leal's going to show some things there off the edge too.
Yeah, he was getting some snaps yesterday. They, I think they use him more so because occasionally they'll put like TJ Watt back in coverage depending on what package they're in. They did that a little bit with Leal yesterday after Highsmith went down. So yeah, you mentioned it. That's a guy who throughout OTAs, minicamp, training camp looked good, and they moved him as well because they were using him in a different spot over the past few years, if I'm not mistaken. And now I think he's in more of a suitable role. So hopefully DeMarvin Leal does big things. In terms of we saw Joey Porter, he had a nice tackle in run defense yesterday. I think we're starting to see him become a more complete player. There's just not many holes on this team. Patrick Queen had team high 8 tackles. Landon Roberts had a really big game. I don't see a hole here. And even we talked about nickel corner coming into the year as being a big one, but Beanie Bishop's played fine. Or overall, this is as close to a flawless defense as you can get.
Beanie got picked on a little bit by McConkey, but I don't think it was so bad to where you were like, dude, this is more defense.
Yeah, it wasn't he's not a black hole there.
I think this week's going to be interesting in that regard. Downs, Pittman, Pierce all can play in there, and Mitchell can play in there too. I'm interested. They're 4 deep at wide receiver in Indy, and so that could be an interesting little test to see. I'm still not sold on Beanie Bishop, but even if you have concerns about Beanie Bishop, you're looking out the bye week and you're like, oh, Cam Sutton's coming back. So, I mean, Pete, don't forget Cam Sutton is coming back.
He is coming back.
Right. And they might have reinforcements coming at linebacker too, if they are really worried about anything there, because Cole Holcomb's probably coming back at some point too. And I mean, that's legitimately, this defense is somehow not even close to 100%. I think that's the scary thing. They have legitimate guys that could contribute. Jeremiah Moon went on injured reserve after getting hurt in the preseason. He was having a really good camp. He would have been a 4th outside linebacker that's more of that edge rusher type, that is a run defender, special teamer. He could help out. Cole Holcomb can help out. Cam Sutton can help out. They have a lot of guys that they can still look at. So there's not a lot of holes. I don't know if there is a hole in the defense outside of slot corner, I think, that you could point to. I think, I think offensively you can point to some holes. I think, the wide receiver position is still an issue. They're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Buffalo and Kansas City.
Right.
With the receiving core they had. Now they can beat, I think, they probably just beat a playoff team yesterday in the Chargers. I think they can beat other playoff teams, but if you want to go on the road and make a run at this thing, you better get someone else in that room. The offensive line is still a concern. We'll see how they gel together, but they are a concern. So those are the 2 biggest things right now for me are, those could be things that derail them, but it's a pretty solid team overall. This is their best roster since 2020, at least.
Yeah.
They are there is sustainability in the formula they won with yesterday. Everyone knew the last 2 years, last 3 years, even 4 years that they were frauds, right?
Sure.
These things were not sustainable. This is why they get blown out in the playoffs. If the Steelers play like they did yesterday and they, have the home game and they're playing, I don't know, let's just say the Bengals, and they can win that game.
Sure.
Playing the Chargers, the Jets, they can beat these teams.
Yeah, like I think that they can win a wild card game, especially if they get a home playoff game. Whether it be against Cincinnati or if they play Baltimore, who they've comfortably beaten 7 of the 8 last time that they've played. Yeah, like these other teams that aren't necessarily like quote unquote contenders, but are playoff teams, they can have their way and maybe end the playoff drought and whatnot. They played with 3 receivers yesterday after Van Jefferson went down. So we saw a little bit more Scotty Miller. We saw Cordero Patterson be used a little bit as a receiver. I think we've kind of been waiting to see if a move gets made for a receiver. I just don't know outside of Devontae who would really be open for business at this point because the Seahawks are 3-0. DK Metcalf's not going anywhere. Buccaneers, I don't think they're trading away Chris Godwin with how tight the NFC South now looks. So kind of running out of dudes that they can really call. I think that, you brought up, it was at the Darius Slayton for the Giants over the offseason. Maybe that's a move you make, but those names are pretty thin.
It is thin. And you look at it and, I think you would question who maybe comes open. I don't know, maybe one of the Panthers guys is, even though
depending on how hurt Adam Thielen is, I haven't seen anything on that yet, but he got hurt yesterday. Maybe.
Deontay again. I don't know.
Would that be something that could actually happen?
I can't rule it out. I mean, I think there were a few reasons they didn't want him back. I think one of them was because he was going to hold out for a new deal.
Again? Oh, goodness.
So I think that was part of it. But yeah, he could be an interesting piece. I mean, like, let's just look at bad teams around the NFL right now. I mean, for example, the Raiders continue to falter. I mean, you talk about Devontae, but what about Jacoby Myers?
Yeah.
Just look at the Bears. Okay, maybe the Bears are, really faltering again and don't love where they're at. Do you call about Keenan Allen? Like,
that would be a good one.
You know what I mean? Like there are guys that could come available. Gary Slayton's another one that you talked about. Think about all of the teams that could fall quickly. Like, yeah, okay, the Titans, they look awful.
They do.
I mean, would they entertain DeAndre Hopkins being?
That would be fun. Okay, now you've got my attention.
Right. Like all these teams are just like, if you think about it, you're like, okay, if they're struggling this much and they're willing to offload guys, that's where you get into interesting territory. And so that's just a few things, right? I mean, like we can look at teams all over the map right now and say that's a bad team that maybe has a veteran that doesn't fit their timeline and they would want to move the guy. Like maybe the Broncos, come around and want to move stuff. Like that could happen. Right? I mean, there's just a few scenarios, but I think this is a closer to the deadline thing than it is like a week 5 thing. That's what I feel like. And so
do we think that the Commanders will move Terry McLaurin considering they aren't doing anything with him at the moment in terms of schematically? It's just a lot of bad Cliff Kingsbury offense.
New front office, I suppose you could, but I don't think they will.
I don't think they will either. They just moved Jahan Dotson. I don't know if they would move 2 receivers in 1 year. A lot of people are saying DJ Moore. Maybe. I don't know.
Just not a huge extension. No chance. The Bears, like the reason I would not say DJ Moore is because the Bears are building for a future there.
Yeah.
He fits their timeline. He's not an old aging vet. He's 27?
I agree.
Like Keenan Allen was a win now move. They're 2-6 at the deadline. I mean, that's a guy you would look to move, right? Not DJ Moore. So, like, that's what I mean when I look at this.
Do you think that there's a situation where DJ Moore is, like, so frustrated in Chicago, he just says, okay, I want traded?
I suppose, but those things can be smoothed over, I feel like, too.
Sure.
Unless it's, like, nuclear, but I don't know why it would reach that point.
I think people are just, like, really reading into his body language and their loss against, Houston last week? Or he's just on the sideline looking pissed off and everything. Maybe, but I think that's more high hopes than anything. DeAndre Hopkins does intrigue me, though. I think that that's a legitimate option there, especially for a guy who's in his 30s. Can still be, at this point in his career, can be a perfectly fine number 2, fits what the offense wants to do. That's one that I will definitely be up for.
Right. I mean, like, listen, you look at some of these teams, man. I mean, Jaguars are 0-2. I mean, if they go 0-3 and continue to spiral, I know that.
Is that a Christian Kirk deal type situation, maybe?
Right. Like, there's a Christian Kirk come available. Like these are guys that you wouldn't have even ever thought of being available.
Yeah,
So there are
yeah.
sometimes surprise teams that just like pop up and you're like, oh, maybe that guy's open now. So like that's what I mean by that. Or, maybe someone rises in the rotation somewhere, kicks a guy out. Like that's kind of different things there. So I don't know. Let's say the Cowboys maybe just really continue to struggle. I mean, and I know Jerry probably will never have enough pride to admit it, but I know at the deadline would they entertain a trade for Brandon Cooks or something like that. Like, you know
Maybe.
what I mean? Like, there's just scenarios, but these are just names I'm throwing out right now. We'll see. It's probably going to take another 3 or 4 weeks to really like bring into focus. Like, okay, these would be the interesting targets. But I think the Titans are one that make a lot of sense. Hopkins doesn't really fit their window if they're not going to win, and getting anything for him would make sense.
If they would get DeAndre Hopkins, how much does that raise their ceiling, in your
Well,
opinion?
he walks his butt off. He's a big physical outside receiver. I mean, he's not too dissimilar from George Pickens, which
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say
don't really care.
similar players.
I don't really care about because if you trade for Hopkins, then who cares? You have 3 other speedy slots in Roman, Calvin Austin, and Scotty Miller to make up for that. So, not really an issue to me in terms of that. So we'll see. And I mean, I guess you also have to factor into by week 8 would they even want to make a trade? I don't know. I think by that point they'll have seen Roman Wilson a little bit and kind of can gauge where he's at. So um, I'm waiting for Roman Wilson to make his debut. He's probably going to need a few weeks to ramp up and in terms of the offense, but give him a small role next week and let's start this clock.
I love it. How confident do you feel about going into next week? I know that Richardson has been. I said it. I just said it with Mike Tanier on the pump fake. I think that Anthony Richardson has become Will Levis with better PR. Like he makes some of the dumbest throws I've seen. He's very sporadic when it comes to accuracy. He'll make a throw that blows your mind like he did in week 1, and he's very athletic in the run game. But I think that we really jumped the gun on Anthony Richardson.
He's fun and he has the high upside to like really buy into it.
Yeah.
And so that's where you get all the highlight reels and all the guys that are like, yes, I love what I'm seeing from Anthony Richardson because he makes the throw he made week 1. I mean, come on, how many guys make throw? There's just rare players there, and I think you got to take AR just like you're taking in Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, whatever, right? He's a rookie. I mean, I know he played 2 games last year, but
he's practically a rookie still. Yeah,
he's a rookie. This is the game is still fast for him, and it shows. That's why he makes a bunch of dumb decisions. But I'm not completely convinced like he has a Will Levis gene where he just like makes the most chaotic dumb decision of all time. I think sometimes he just thinks that his arm can get balls to places that he cannot, and NFL defenders are going to harp on that, and I think that's part of it. So I think he's going to learn the NFL and everything. He's just so talented, man. Physically, like his tools are so special. His speed, his arm talent at that size and that speed. Like we don't really see guys come into the NFL like that at quarterback. Like there aren't many historical examples of that guy, and so we'll see what ends up happening in terms of that. I mean, I think the Steelers should win next week. I mean, they should.
Yeah. I've said that the last 3 weeks. I've gone into okay, they should win, but it won't surprise me if they don't.
I thought they probably should have lost to Atlanta going into that one, but I didn't have the scheme in mind to imagine the defense would do that to Kirk Cousins' offense. So now having that in mind, even last week I was like, yeah, if they lose this game, I wouldn't be surprised. The Chargers, they should win this game. You have a turnover-prone quarterback. The way you lose this game is Jonathan Taylor just runs all over you. It's another test for them on the ground. Now they stuffed Dobbins in that Chargers run game, but
held them to 61 yards on the ground. So
yeah, JT man is dangerous. He's the best running back they faced on their schedule, and that's saying something because Bijan Robinson is on that schedule. He is so dynamic. So they're going to get a test this week from JT, and I think that's the biggest way to lose this game. Outside of Justin Fields just completely losing every growth pattern he had and reverting back to who he was in Chicago. that's always a possibility that I can't dismiss, where everything just goes out the window and it's like, that's why Justin Fields was available for a sixth-round pick. But with the quality we've seen, that is a bad run defense. Like, it
Yeah.
really is. And the Bears are just a bad run blocking offense. Like, the Steelers not been a great run blocking offense, but they have been good enough. And if Seumalo comes back, and I think there's a real chance Isaac Seumalo plays this week, they should be able to run. Because, again, DeForest Buckner's not playing in this game.
That's another big thing is they have their best run defender isn't playing.
Right. In the first 2 weeks, the Colts got absolutely gashed on the ground. And I think the Steelers should be able to do that. Like, they should be able to do that even if Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are both out. And I don't anticipate that happening. I think
What's Najee dealing with, by the way?
A right arm injury. He was in a sling in the locker room today.
Okay.
But my initial vibes were that was like a let's do this just in case. Like, I've seen guys in slings and boots. I've even seen guys on crutches play on Sunday. So yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Najee's like one of those vets that can like not practice all week and still play on Sunday. So I think he'll be okay. Less optimistic on Jalen Warren. I think that might be a possible IR stint, I think, for him. So we'll see.
Less than ideal there.
It's not ideal, but if Cordero plays like he did against the Chargers, they will be okay in that regard. But they will miss Jalen Warren's pass pro if that is where it comes down to. But I do think that the Steelers are going to be missing a few guys. Like I don't think they're going to have Highsmith. I don't think they're going to have I don't think Russ is going to be available just yet. I think that cap is still an issue. Because one thing that I think the Steelers can at least take solace in, if they do name Justin the starter and Justin just completely decombusts, is that, hey, like Russ at least is here, right? Like if everything hits the fan, you're like, okay, I know Russ isn't what he used to be, but Russ can do things that can at least keep the offense afloat. So yeah.
I said that I think that Justin Fields can be to Pittsburgh what Baker Mayfield was to Tampa Bay. That's an apples to oranges comparison, but similar in the lights where, they kind of get cast away by their former organizations, land in a place that suits them a little bit better. And if they get that, they got their quarterback for at least the immediate long-term future.
Yes, no doubt about it. I'm not convinced we're going to see that just yet, but I am starting to come around on Justin, but I need to see at least like 12 to 13 games of this to get it on Justin, because the worst thing you can do is other than being in the quarterback purgatory the Steelers have been in, is to pay someone into quarterback purgatory. You do not want to be Daniel Jones and the Giants.
I think that, and Tanier pointed this out on the pump fake, I want to see Justin Fields play from behind, where he has to make some throws, where he has to, push the envelope a little bit and see if they are capable of doing that. We haven't really seen them have to do that. We've seen them, in tie game situations and things like that, but we haven't really seen them like trailing. Okay, we need a big drive here to really, bring us back. So I think that if and when we see that, that'll, either give us even more confidence or maybe take some away.
Yes, I agree with that. And so we'll kind of see it. I do want to see I want to see him pop. Like, I want to see that where he has to make the throws against the wall. I think we saw a little bit of that yesterday, but not full there. But that's what I want to see. And if he passes that test, there's really not much more he can do at that point.
Adam says, if Warren can't come back for a while, would you re-sign Najee in the offseason because you might not know what you'll get from Warren from now on? Do you think that there's a possibility Najee re-signs? Or do you think he's absolutely going to sign elsewhere?
I mean, I don't think the Steelers are going to pay what he wants. I think he's going to probably want, 9-10 a year. I think Ramondre got what, 9? And if I were Najee, like, I don't care what your opinion is of this of a Ramondre Stevenson.
He's better than Ramondre Stevenson,
right? If I were Najee, I'd be like, I'm better than that guy. So I would ask for more.
Fair enough. All right, buddy. What have you got coming on Penn Live?
Yeah, man, got a lot coming today. Got my report card from the film watched. Got some injury reports coming up. Troy Fautanu details. Hint, I'll give you some Troy Fautanu details right now. This injury was not to the same knee he hurt in the preseason. It was to the other knee. So, both knees got banged up this year. And I don't think we ever found out which knee he got flagged for pre-draft. I would like to know that, but um, it's interesting the way it happened. This was a non-contact injury, so it was really odd to dislocate your kneecap non-contact. Does not happen very often.
Yeah, that sounds not great.
It's not, but he has a legit chance of returning for the playoffs. So there is that. And in terms of long-term hurdles for this injury, there's not a ton. So it's not a meniscus where long-term you get arthritis or anything, but stuff like that's coming up, man. So make sure to check that out.
In terms of me, I'll be doing study on Max Crosby tomorrow. So when that comes out, I'll let y'all know. That'll be a lot of fun. Still figuring out if it's going to be video or just written, but regardless, it'll be fun to sit down with Max. So when that's out, I'll let everybody know about it. But appreciate everybody for tuning in. Steelers are 3-0, and it's a great day to be alive in Pittsburgh. Talk to y'all soon. Enjoy your day and enjoy Monday Night Football tonight. Got a doubleheader. We need a Commanders win to really feel good about what's going on in the AFC North. So appreciate y'all for tuning in. Have a good one.